If Star Wars is a story about heroes and villains, an aspirational myth about the choice of good over evil, then Andor is the backstory to that conflict. A ground-level view of the little decisions that make up history as we know it. The little heroes, the little villains, and of course, all the people in between. But when looking at Andor, the two characters that stick out to me by far the most are Luthen Rael and Major Leo Partigaz. They are encapsulations of concepts I've been fascinated with for a long time. The perfect anti-hero and the perfect anti-villain. The term anti-hero is a vague one. Webster's defines it as a character who lacks the traditional heroic traits. But what does that even mean? In Greek literature, it was simply a counter to their image of a hero. A character with toughness, bravery, intelligence, strength, and a quest for honor and glory. But in this context, having an anti-hero be the opposite of that, to me just sounds like a good character. And when it comes to Star Wars, this label has been thrown around a bit too loosely. Popular consensus says that Boba Fett is an anti-hero, The Mandalorian is an anti-hero, even Darth Maul is an anti-hero. But these characters aren't anti-heroes. They're just heroes, or maybe even villains. An anti-hero should be midway between a hero and a villain. Someone who, if given more time, would certainly descend or ascend further, but either hasn't or won't. And if we look at it this way, Luthen Rael is the perfect anti-hero. Luthen begins his story as a sergeant in the Imperial Army, a man responsible for enforcing the Empire's growing oppression throughout the galaxy. And given his rank, I think it's implied that he not only took part in this growing oppression, but thrived within the Imperial system. And while, after meeting Kleya, he heroically has a change of heart and leaves this way of life, I'm not sure it ever leaves him. He's a broken man, a dead man, with a new name and a new cause, but the same ruthless methods. And it's this lethal approach that establishes him not just as a tragic hero, but an anti-hero.
I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them.
A character who, as the show progresses, we begin to see a much darker side. Luthen understands war, and he understands what it takes to win it. And in doing so, makes a formidable enemy to both his enemies and his friends. This is clearly demonstrated in two massive events. In Season 1, the Aldhani heist, and in Season 2, the Gorman Massacre. Aldhani is originally pitched as a heist to fund the rebellion. An attack which takes advantage of a fortunate series of events, including a once-in-a-lifetime natural phenomenon, to rob 50 million credits from the Imperial payroll. And while this mission is successful, with only a few lives lost along the way, we discover quickly that credits weren't really part of the mission. This was a ploy to goad the Empire.
We need them to overreact.
You can't be serious.
The Empire has been choking us so slowly we're starting not to notice. The time has come to force their hand.
People will suffer.
That's the plan.
And this Imperial fury will directly cause the imprisonment and death of millions, as well as the growth of anger against the Empire, the growth of resistance. This is where we begin to see who Luthen really is. A pragmatist, a master manipulator, but for a righteous cause. And with the Gorman Massacre, this becomes woefully unignorable. In Gorman, we are at the heart of the action. We see every single step of planning along the way for years leading up to it, and Luthen's direct role in orchestrating this slaughter. And in this particular situation, Luthen and the Empire even have the same goals.
Propaganda will only get you so far. You need a radical insurgency you can count on.
Count on for what?
You need Gorman rebels you can depend on to do the wrong thing.
Think about a planet like Gorman in rebellion. A planet of wealth and status.
If it goes up in flames,
It will burn. Very brightly.
Not only is Luthen working against the approved methods of the rebellion, and even just the conventions of standard morality, he's actively joining the enemy, doing what they do, but for his own means and the means of the rebellion. And this is deeply disturbing. But while it has more than questionable moral implications, it does ultimately save the rebellion, gives life to the cause, a cause which Luthen ultimately gives his life for. I think it's important to remember that whether the Empire or the Rebellion won this fateful war, Luthen would have been forgotten or condemned either way. He's the step between hero and villain, and because of this, is rejected by both. An anti-hero. But what is the opposite of an anti-hero? It's neither villain nor hero, but like its counterpart, something in between. And like Luthen, we get a perfect example of this in Andor, in the character of Leo Partigaz. There are many parallel characters in Andor. Syril and Cassian, Dedra and Kleya, and finally, Luthen Rael and Leo Partigaz. Which brings me to my next but lesser known concept, the anti-villain. Both Rael and Leo are unfortunate products of war. Both manage the undercover operations of their respective sides, and both live and die by the same philosophy: victory or death.
We'll bring them down or die trying. What else is there?
Now, if an anti-hero is someone who does the right thing for the wrong reasons, then an anti-villain is someone who does the wrong things for the right reasons. Major Partigaz is one of the most enjoyable characters in the series because he is earnest.
And I love those parts that are complicated, as we all are. They're much more interesting than just being a baddie or a goodie. He's very complex and he's very, as you say, he's under a lot of pressure.
Unlike other Imperial officers, he genuinely seems to believe the cause he is embracing. He's not a bully, but a master strategist, and approaches problems within the Imperial system simply as issues to be solved.
We are healthcare providers. We treat sickness. We identify symptoms. We locate germs, whether they arise from within or have come from the outside. The longer we wait to identify a disorder, the harder it is to treat the disease. Do you understand my meaning, Regret?
In watching the show, I found myself wanting to see more scenes of him, and sad at his inevitable demise. And it's in his death that I think Partigaz tells us almost everything we need to know about his character. He is a man of honor, twisted though it may be, and one who will accept the rules of the system that he upholds, even when they apply to himself. The farthest thing from Imperial hypocrisy.
Death Star, what a prescient turn of phrase.
I can't protect you, Leo.
You were supposed to be ready by now.
You sound like Tarkin.
It's a miracle we've kept it quiet this long.
We're moments away. Days! A few more tests, we're there.
Save the sermon for Palpatine.
Indeed.
While some viewers may deny it, Leo Partigaz was not simply bearable, but he was actively likable. And in watching the show, I found myself wanting to see more scenes of him, and sad at his inevitable demise. Strangely, that makes him admirable. Even more admirable than Dedra Meero, who, despite serving his direct orders and working directly with him, somehow appears to be significantly more evil. See, I think what's interesting about Partigaz is that there is no point at which he realizes he's doing wrong or he chooses to manipulate people like Dedra. He genuinely believes in the Imperial cause, and does everything in his power to act this out. It may have taken him some time and great damage to his existing conscience to get to that point, but when we meet him, he's already there. And he has spent so much time in pure facts and logic that he has been able to separate himself from the humanity of his foes and the situation. He is a great leader of a vile cause. And like any leader, he understands that sacrifices can and must be made. That the suffering of the few prevents the success of the enemy. And it's this cold calculation combined with a narrow-minded worldview that makes this character so realistic. While it's easy to just label his character as another part of the Empire, scoffing in disgust at his authoritarian fascism, if you look at his actions and his cope-ability, Partigaz and Luthen are not too dissimilar. Both are pragmatists. Both are leaders. Both understand what is required for an effective cause to thrive. And both are condemned to die. Luthen, as a product of his rebellion, and Partigaz, a product of the Empire. It provokes self-reflection when you find yourself rooting for heroic villains or villainous heroes. And I think unwilling admiration is almost always a sign of subtle, artistic storytelling. It's crazy to think that as a creator, with the right story and characters, you can get almost anyone to approve of anything. But when talking about Andor, the characters of Luthen Rael and Leo Partigaz are not only a welcome addition, but necessary ones. They represent the manifestation of moral ambiguity that we all face, especially in times of war. Because while both Luthen and Partigaz may be morally questionable people, each man is exactly what their cause requires. Loyal followers, master strategists, and relentless leaders. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, you should like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because now that we've talked about heroes and anti-heroes, it's only fair we finish the trilogy with my favorite. Villains. But no matter what you do, always remember, keep reading, keep writing, and I will see you all in the next video.